Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sweet Baby Ray and Zorn Hub Show. I'm your co-host here, Andrew Zorn, or Zin.
And I'm your co-host, Sweet Baby Ray Burrows.
And we have a special guest here today. Would you like to introduce yourself? You know, this is a very important episode because there's a lot of stories about you that might have been flirted.
Our most unstable friend.
Most unstable friend, and the topic for this podcast makes sense. But go ahead, Nick.
So my name's Nick Kindbeiter. I am the puncher of trees.
Puncher, can you give a quick story to why you're the puncher of trees, and then we can get right into it?
Aggression is a great power, and there seems to be no walls that can handle me, so I go for trees instead.
No walls or women. That
is true.
Is that correct, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty accurate.
So for those who don't know, his name is Nick Kindbeiter, but in German, child beater. But
yes, in German it means child beater. Roughly.
But today's episode, we're talking about the UFC. This weekend on Saturday is UFC 280. Featuring three big fights: Jan versus O'Malley, Sterling versus Dillashaw, and Oliveira versus Makhachev. Big fights coming up this weekend. Nick, let's get started with you. We got pick'ems first. I'm going to go through all three of those fights, the three main fights for this card. Right. And I'll let you go first. Jan versus O'Malley. Who do you got?
So, a little bit of bias here. I am a Sean O'Malley fan, but it's a little bit of a mystery with him, and I'm going to gamble on that mystery.
So you're taking Sean?
I'm taking Sean.
You gotta be definitive about it. You gotta be confident.
I said I'm gonna gamble with Sean. Is what I said.
This is Dana's.
It wasn't very clear.
It wasn't very clear, and this is Dana's baby. He's been groomed for this, you know.
Yes, he's been groomed very well.
Oh Christ! Right, go ahead.
Well, I think it's very important that I note. I definitely, this is not my area of expertise. My UFC basically revolves around Conor McGregor's fights. And honestly, I know you're going to say this is beta, but I've watched more female UFC than I've watched male. When Ronda Rousey was fighting, she was, something special.
Why were you watching Ronda Rousey fight?
That's not important.
He was watching Ronda.
It's not important. I wasn't really focused on the fight, but we'll get there. So in this fight, I think Jan O'Malley is going to be an interesting fight because if you look at the odds, which I did, because like I said, I'm not that up to speed with UFC like these two are. But I like Jan, to be honest, in this fight. Looking at the odds, I know he lost, how do you pronounce his name, Aljo?
Yeah, you just call him Aljo.
Just call him Aljo. Aljo Sterling, yes, we're referring to.
Yeah, I know he lost to him, but he did, he did have a couple big wins, and I'm going to go with Jan in that fight.
I'm going to have to agree with Ray, but I'm going to clarify why. Okay.
Be more articulate than I was, I hope.
Sean O'Malley is being, like we said, groomed by Dana White just to be the star of the bantamweight division. And I get it. You don't want to expose him to too much, and they've done a really good job by bringing him up slowly, giving him fights to where he can build up his confidence. But Jan's the first, like we always say, well, this is another big test for O'Malley. Jan's the real test. We were doing study problems before. Jan's the real deal. The only guy he's lost to is Sterling. I would say when the past is 3 years, maybe 4 years.
Something like that.
He's being Aldo before. It's to me he's being Sanhagen. To me, Jan's the fighter that O'Malley's going to have to really dig deep, and we're going to have to see, can O'Malley, take some punches where he really hasn't been able. He doesn't have to stand in there with that frame and always take punches. He's more of a striker, and he delivers that and controls the pace. I think Jan's going to challenge him with that.
I just got a question as someone who's just not that educated on the topic.
Go ahead, incompetent.
Thank you. What has Dana White done differently with him?
Well, he's promoted him extremely well. So
different than other fighters.
He wasn't fighting ranked fighters when
he was getting prime spots.
People.
Yeah, he was getting prime time spots. If you see his appearance, his also his personality. He's very out there.
He has rainbow hair.
He has rainbow hair. He's in an open relationship on his side.
Well, he's marketed in a way because of his personality to be the next big star.
Yes.
Okay.
His personality, his fight style, it's something that draws attention, and Dana White's trying to keep it like that.
Well, I mean, Dana White, even though I'm not that knowledgeable about the sport, I do know he's done a great job marketing this sport.
Yes.
In terms of it does have a very dedicated base.
Yeah, and I think COVID was what really brought that out of everyone. The fact that they stayed alive during COVID and were still producing during COVID was huge. But I think we move on to the next fight now. Sterling versus Dillashaw. Do you want me to start this one
Yeah,
first?
I think you should start.
I think I should. Okay, let me pull some stuff out here real quick. I like Dillashaw. I personally do. My thing right now is that Sterling looks unstoppable. 21-3 going against. I know Dillashaw's 18-4, but Sterling just looks like he can't be touched. I mean, his last loss was in 2017, I believe, to Marlon Moraes. Moraes. He's on a nice hot streak. He sets a tempo very well. Dillashaw a little older. I mean, like they both. This is gonna be a fun fight. They both bring a lot to the table. I know. The big thing we always talk about in fighting is the reach. He has a 4-inch advantage with Dillashaw. I'm gonna go with Sterling. I feel like he's gonna ride the hot hand very well here, and I'm not too high on Dillashaw at 36 years old, being still in prime Sterling.
So, Aljamain Sterling, this was the hardest fight for me to decide on. Aljamain Sterling came back after taking a DQ win from Piotr Jan, and he came back and he basically mauled him
for 5 rounds.
Yeah.
And getting the decision.
And then TJ Dillashaw he's fought twice in the past 2 years. He fought Corey Sandhagen, and then he fought Triple C, who beat him at flyweight though. I'm gonna have to go with Dillashaw, and I'm doing that because Dillashaw has a lot of championship experience.
He does.
I don't think that his time off hurts him as much as people think it does, and I think that Aljo is going to underestimate him, and I think that TJ can win this one.
Right?
Well, from what I read, and I've actually...
Wait. Sorry, Professor. Can you go ahead real quick and get this one started?
Sorry. So, from what I've read in the videos I've watched,
whoa,
I would, both related to UFC and not, what I've seen is Sterling has looked unstoppable at times. And I know Dillashaw has a lot of pedigree within the sport. As Child Beater just mentioned, he has a lot of experience. But dude, Sterling's still in his prime, and Dillashaw's age and the time off, I know you say it won't affect him that much, but who knows? Because any athlete you take time off, it affects some aspect. And Sterling's just going out there and just beating the people to a pulp. So I'm going to go Sterling in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. I get why you're saying Dillashaw, the championship experience, I think it is a valid argument to make with it. But Sterling just, to me, he's like an Energizer bunny. The guy does whatever the hell he wants, bounces around, and I think he's going to have his way with Dillashaw. I would say, if I make a prediction, this goes 4 rounds. I'll say by submission for Sterling. Dillashaw, get him the hell out of there. I think it's not going to be a quick fight.
If there's a finish, I think Aljo's going to win. But I think if it goes to decision, TJ has a chance to sway some judges to give him a split decision win.
And I think it's important to note, too, that I know this is thrown around a lot in sports. Sterling looks like a man amongst boys at times.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, just looks way more in shape at times, way more
his conditioning his technique is insane. Dillashaw, I think with his age and experience, can kind of counter that, but yeah, especially against like guys who don't have the same experience, because Sterling's, I believe, 33, so he's kind of still in that perfect prime, but he's not where he's
not
aging yet. Yeah, he's like in the perfect, kind of like an Oliveira,
and he hasn't taken time off.
Yeah, he hasn't taken time off. Consistent fights. So
because age is something that in all sports is both a blessing and a curse, because age can catch up with you, but age also gives you the experience and wisdom within the sport of knowing how to navigate it. So that actually could end up being maybe like the best overall fight.
Yeah, I can see that.
It really could be.
Well, I think, Nick, do you have anything else to say about it, or do you want to go moving on? Let's move on. Last fight, the big one. So those are co-main events, but let's be real here, ladies and gentlemen. There's a real main event happening.
There's a 1A and there's 2 1Bs.
Yes. Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Nick. Oh, actually, wait, no.
Yeah,
Ray.
let Ray start.
Let the professor get his footing out here. Ray, go ahead. Give me your expert opinion based off your readings.
Well, this is actually the fight I know the most about.
Okay.
Because I remember when he didn't make weight in the previous one. he was stripped of his title, and there was a big uproar about that. I know
There
you
was.
have feelings about
Yes.
that, whether you agree with that or not. I believe, wasn't he 7 pounds overweight?
No, that's Hamza.
Oh, okay.
That was,
He's only half.
that
He was
was-
only half a
that was
pound.
Kamzat.
He was a half a pound overweight. Okay, that makes more sense.
And there was this, me and Nick were talking about this before, that we don't know how valid it is, but Tony Ferguson was reported to be jumping on the scale,
Yeah.
which, let's be honest, for an electronic scale, if someone's jumping on it with full force, that could mess it up by half a pound.
And it was reported that Charles was on pace for weight before he came out, and he came off on the stage and he was half a pound over.
Which to me is bullshit. I mean, yes, it's in Kamzat's case where it's 7 pounds, okay, totally different. That's an unfair advantage. That's dangerous for the opposing fighter. Half a pound, because we all know what happens when they get done with these cuts. They just go back and eat. They put back on all the weight they cut, because it's all body weight, or water weight.
Well, the thing is, whether it's UFC or just regular boxing, is we've seen, because of weight classes, fights where the guy is 25 pounds heavier than his opponent. We've seen fights like that. And now, I know they're trying to cut back on that, but beyond that, so I think what's really underestimated here is all three of these fights are very close in betting. I believe that
This one,
O'Malley and Jan fight is the one that's closest at the moment, according to Vegas. But this one has moved the most when I look at the line.
okay.
Like, it's been all over the place, and I think that shows that people are really divided on who they think they're going to win.
They are, and to give some background, Islam Makhachev is the prodigy of Khabib Nurmagomedov. If you don't know who that is, just look up Conor McGregor's last championship fight. You'll be fine.
That one, I do know who he is. I even know who that is.
But Khabib, notice what I would say the best wrestler grappler all time, up there in UFC history. Regarding for his perfect record, he's training Islam, who's 22-1, has one loss, but it's kind of like his prodigy. And Khabib would say that he left early, and people were wondering why. Well, it's because of this. Islam is what he is. He's making him. He wants to make him become the champion, and this is his shot with Charles. And Charles, I think is not going to let. I'm going to give my prediction. Charles is not going to let this one go, especially after what happened with Gaethje last fight. I'm not really gonna think he's okay with losing his championship bout like that, or his belt like that, getting stripped of it for half a pound, and now he's going against a guy who has called out, and Khabib, to fight him for the championship, and he's going against this guy he's training. I got Charles. I think Charles has all the motivation in the world. Plus, the thing with this fight that is so exciting is these guys are both grappling and ground kind of guys.
Yes.
That's what's so scary. Charles, you don't want to get on the ground with him. Islam might be, just because that's Islam's strength, and the amount of wrestling and also jiu-jitsu that's going to go into place here is going to be insane to watch. But with that said, Charles has more experience. Charles's sparring has increased, but every fight he goes, his sparring is tenfold better. I got Charles.
I have to agree there. I have Charles as well. See, early in his career, Charles was not the fighter he is now.
No.
I think he said that the resurrection is what people call it. Is his daughter was born, and after that he became an animal.
Funny how that works, isn't it? Usually it's the other way around. Usually you settle down once you have a kid. This guy decided, oh, look at my beautiful baby girl. I'm gonna go out there and beat other people's kids to a fucking pulp.
See, the thing about
That's
Charles,
where child beaters expertise.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, my expertise.
He's not just the UFC expert, he's a psychologist expert too. Personal experience.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
Charles was, for most of his early career, he was known as a one-dimensional fighter. He was the submissive. He was a submission guy.
Yes.
At least since he's been champion, he's developed some hands, and I think people underestimate it because they know he wants to submit you, but they'll stand and bang with him, and then they'll get knocked down. And I don't think that Islam is fully prepared for what he's getting into. I think Charles is top 5 pound for pound best fighters in the world right now.
I agree. Especially after the Usman loss, I think he's got to be pushing top 3. Because I know Usman was ranked 1, got kicked down, but
I think Volk is number 1
Volk's right now, yeah, and they're talking about he's making a push to come up to lightweight.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of potential in this division, but the one that kind of asterisk that's been on this division is Islam. is Islam legit? And now we get we get a shot to see if this is real or not. And I got faith in Charles Du Bronx Oliveira that he is going to knock the fuck out of Islam. I'm tired of hearing, Khabib's name. I'm tired of hearing his mention of sport. Khabib, you're done. You're done, and so should your boy. So I got faith in Charles. Charles, finish this. Get back the belt that you rightfully deserve.
I would agree with both of you. I do think Charles wins this fight. I think we can't underestimate the importance of his title being stripped and the dedication to want to get it back.
Yes.
But I also think that regardless of who wins this fight, there's going to be a rematch.
Yes.
Whether that's, a year down the line, whether it's, 2 years down the line, it's going to happen at some point. And I believe that Charles, if I can look over at Nick's notes for a minute, is on an 11-fight win streak.
He is on an 11-fight win streak, right? Yes, you're correct.
And Islam is on a 10?
Yeah, so there's a lot of momentum carrying both these guys into this fight. And with Charles, it's been a lot of trial and error. Islam hasn't really had to face trial and error. He's gotten good fights. He's fought well. But the thing I would like to say is Charles has faced adversity throughout his career. And he knows how to overcome that. He's completely changed his game. Like going back to what Nick said, it's a great point. When you watch Charles, he'll still get knocked down in fights, but he'll get on his back. They don't want to go down on the ground with him. But when he gets back up, his sparring is so impressive. He's knocking guys down with his sparring, but which before would never happen. I would have to grapple to get you into submission. Now I'm sparring to get you into submission, which is like the perfect. I think he's the perfect, most well-rounded fighter.
I just know, even though you're going to laugh at me because you both know I don't know as much about this sport as you guys do. I just know from browsing the sports sections, and I know I'm a nutty professor is what you're going to say, and I read too much.
That's an interesting adjective to use, browsing.
Yeah. I browse quite often.
I
browse quite often. But what I'm saying is, just from this fight is actually getting considerable amount of press.
Yes.
And I think UFC is doing a good job at promoting these fights. Even the other fights that are going on in this, I've seen little things about. But once again, it's going to be the story of, can he take back the title that was rightly or wrongly stripped from him? Yeah. That's going to be the big story of the fight. And both of these guys having so much momentum coming into this fight is exactly what you want in any sport. Whether it be in other sports like the Super Bowl, you always want to see the two best teams go at it. Yeah. When it's the World Series, this year it's not the case, but you want to see the two best teams go at it. And I think when you see these guys who are riding the hot hand, if you will, just doing their thing, getting victories, it's going to make for must-see
television, yeah.
I will say, I think whoever wins this fight, I think is holding on to that title for a long time.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't see these are...
Even if there's a rematch? If there's a rematch.
Well, I think Volk's going to come up to this division and kind of command a title shot. So there's a lot going on in this division, but I think if this is the biggest challenge for both Oliveira and Islam, they're going to face. I think we can both agree with that. At least for the
both. I'm here too, bro.
So I said we can both agree. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
There's three of us today.
There's three of us today. You're more like
you're the backseat.
You're more like you're like the cuck. You have to watch. You have to watch. But with that said, there's so much momentum going into this fight. I really like you guys' points about that. This is it. I think, and there might be some unforeseen challenger coming, but this is the fight that's been kind of set up for. We've been waiting for almost a year and a half now.
The great thing about this card is that everyone who's headlining this can surprise you.
Yeah, and that kind of gets into the next point is of the three we've talked about for the three most important fights, which one's the most important for the card for the UFC as a whole? I'll start with this one because to me it's obvious. It's Jan O'Malley, and more so on the O'Malley side because you put a lot of money, you put a lot of backing into O'Malley. This is the guy you've been trying to bring up through this division. You've been giving him prime spots when he's fighting no names. I remember there's been fights when I can't even think of the guy's name. His challenger dropped out. They just pulled a guy off and signed him to the UFC the day before. Yeah, and O'Malley just knocked the hell out of him for 5 rounds.
He described him as a punching bag with arms.
Yeah, punching bag with arms.
So
you've been handed all this prime television. Prime, you're one of the faces of the UFC without even having being in a title fight yet.
I don't even think he's ranked in the top 10.
So this fight, just for someone who's, as I said, taking a back seat today.
Yeah.
And I'm being serious here. I don't want to be judged. this fight, if he wins, is this the first like big win on his resume?
Yes,
It's
it's the by far the biggest.
The biggest one, and one of his very few like legitimate like. I beat a real like world class fighter.
Well,
Jan's the guy,
And I know he has a big personality, and you say that's why Dana White has been pushing it. Is he trying to mold Jan to maybe be the next McGregor type face?
O'Malley, yes, he wants O'Malley to be that personality of a McGregor.
Sorry, O'Malley.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, this fight. So basically, O'Malley's been fighting guys like. Remember Rocky 3 after he wins and Mickey.
He's fighting the 10.
He's fighting. He's like, you fought 10 bums because I've been trying to protect. You know what I mean? Protecting the title. Is that kind of what's been going on with O'Malley? He's been fighting bums but getting publicity.
So, a couple years ago, he got ranked after knocking out Eddie Wineland, and
Was he any good?
previously, not probably not during.
He was
the
at the
time.
end of his.
Eddie
rope.
Wineland was at the end of his bout. You know, he's an established fighter.
Yeah.
He's not a championship level
Yeah.
fighter.
After
But that win got him credibility, is what I understand.
that win like sparked him, and
Okay.
I think he got ranked at 14, and then he lost to Cheeto Vera or TKO. He says he doesn't. He said he didn't lose it, but after that he
lost to
lost to Cheeto Vera.
Chiavera. Yes, he did, and it's kind of a blemish on his 15 and he's 15-1. It's his one blemish. But I mean, with my problem with O'Malley is that, like I said, you've been giving him substantial, time, giving him the top fights. If this doesn't pay off for Dana White, this could be a really bad blemish for the UFC, simply because you have kind of put him over other fighters. And for instance, Peter Yan, we really don't talk a lot about Peter Yan, but this is the fight we're talking about him with Sean O'Malley. That's why it's a main event, because. Not because Peter Yan he's a top fighter in the bantamweight division. It's because Sean O'Malley's fighting him, and Sean O'Malley hasn't fought a top fighter really until this fight with Yan.
I think the only reason he's gotten this is he hasn't been fighting the best of opponents, but he's been doing what he has to do.
He's been doing what he has
He's
to
been
do.
dominating them.
And he's been putting on a good show. But now you're really going to test him to see if he's the real deal. So that's my pick for what's the most important fight. O'Malley needs to win to kind of prove to Dana White that this was a smart choice to give him this much, invest this much into O'Malley.
I really want to agree with you. Sean O'Malley is my favorite fighter, but I can't go away from Charles versus Islam.
Yeah,
I think it's the most important card this year. It's up there.
It's up there. I can agree with that fully. Mine's more based on a business decision, But with you for a fight one, I agree.
Just Sean O'Malley. I think it's going to be a great fight, but this is the fight that everyone wants to see. It's two of like the most impenetrable forces going up against each other, and we have to see which one's going to knock the other one out, basically.
Well, I'm going to agree with Nick, because not only is this fight potentially the fight of the year, it also has ramifications of what happens next in other main events.
Yes.
Like, I understand what you're saying, and I would agree that from everything you're telling me about O'Malley and how he's being put in this position by Dana White to basically take over as the face of the sport eventually, kind of grooming him in a way, that would be a big fight. And I think that could, from what you're telling me, be one of the bigger undercards of the year. But at the same time, this is a fight where a guy has been stripped of his title.
Yes.
This is a fight where if the guy loses, what is Charles going to do if he loses? And then Islam could be thrown even greater into the stratosphere of UFC. So I think that's probably the most important fight.
Everyone's talking about how Charles turned it around. Charles is one or two best top fighters in the world, and in my opinion, he ain't two. But if Charles wins, everyone's saying Charles could potentially be the greatest lightweight of all time, surpassing Khabib. Which,
if he wins this fight,
if he wins this fight, at least the second half of his career, I could agree with that.
It's hard to compare because Khabib what Khabib relies on is I beat McGregor in his prime when he was the 2-division champion, and I won unblemished. I had a perfect record. I never had suffered a loss in the UFC.
He didn't even
get
cut.
I get why people put him on a pedestal for that. Here's what I would say. I think a fighter who shows the trial and error of his fighting and he doesn't give this. Oh well, he was a perfect fighter. No, there's no such thing as a perfect
I
fighter.
think
or
it's
a perfect
I think it's
athlete.
better that he has the
It
blemishes.
shows. Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. The blemishes, I think, show how much greatness has taken for him to go from being a very raw, not the best fighter. He's talented.
Back in the day,
but to
he was
one
a
of the most
mediocre fighter.
Yeah,
for the
he was
most
mediocre
part.
fighter to one of the most technical specialists in the lightweight division. Where there's nothing you want. Now that his sparring is up to par with his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling. It's almost impossible to beat him, and that's where I think this fight is so interesting. But traditionally, Charles has gone against other sparring guys. Now he's finally going against another wrestler, or it's another grappler. This is going to be really interesting. And this fight, I think, if Charles wins this, I don't know if it 100% puts him above Khabib, but it puts him right next to it.
I do remember. Andrew, you can at least admit it from us going to high school together. I did follow UFC a little bit in high school.
Yes.
I did. And I remember the seismic shift in the sport when Khabib beat McGregor.
Yes.
It was a seismic shift because McGregor was on a streak like no other and we talked about this in an earlier episode of our show, how McGregor basically changed the sport in terms of he became the face, win or lose.
Yeah.
And to have Khabib knock him out, it was just catastrophic it was probably good for the sport, but at the time it was just a seismic shift.
It's
You
without
lost
that
your
without
biggest
that
superstar.
Yeah, without that fight, Khabib's not as big as he is.
Yes. And
It's a career-defining moment.
I agree. And, the thing is now, that's why I picked O'Malley, because O'Malley's that guy who's on the come up. Right now, Oliveira has a spotlight. Could it be there? I don't think they've marketed him properly to where it could be as big as it is. That's why they're doing a Sean O'Malley. We start with him young, kind of like how we had with Conor. He was a hot shot on the scene. He started getting fights. People, the crowd. He started getting his own niche market, and they actually grew that. And they're trying to do the same thing with Sean. So if Sean doesn't win this one, and he kind of shows, well, I'm just a fraud. There goes your marketing, your marketing tactic.
Yeah.
I just want to know, has O'Malley improved? Like when
Yes.
He
Yes.
has. He has.
O'Malley, with every fight, he does improve. The worry is that though he hasn't improved enough because he's not facing a high-end talent.
We don't know.
We don't know how much
how,
he's improved.
We don't know
he
how
has
much
improved.
we don't know how much his striking is going to be effective to the top guys.
Yeah, because that's what he's a striker.
Got you.
He's not as big of a wrestler as these other guys. He's not going to try and get you down, submit.
I just wanted to know.
He's going to punch the living fuck out of you and knock you.
I
out.
just want to know, has he even just been fighting straight bums? And
No.
His competition's progressively getting a little better, but it's
So they've basically been Dana White's been trying to ease him in.
ease him in.
Yeah.
But the problem is now you're going against Jan. Jan could be the jump that's too much.
He went from 0 to 100.
Yes.
Okay.
And they've been trying to ease him in, but now you're just saying, okay, we've eased you in. Go fight the wolf.
You're ranked now. You have to fight the number one contender.
And
now.
just what I've seen and heard, that O'Malley's a guy who, at times, the question is the motor. He'll come out real fast, and then towards the end of the fight, he'll slow down in terms of...
And his defense starts lacking. He starts allowing, and no one's truly quite taking advantage of it as much as they should have, but his guard starts slipping as it gets towards round 4 and 5. That's when you exploit Sean O'Malley. And it's, like I said, it's a tale of literally Conor McGregor. It's a copy of him. Conor's a fast fighter. I'm going to come out rounds 1, 2 and try to knock you out.
And if I don't, then I have to survive.
Yeah.
Got you.
So the next topic we're moving on to is which upcoming fight past 280 are you the most excited for coming up in the UFC?
So I'm gonna go with a little bit of a surprise. I'm gonna go with Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa. I got announced yesterday, I believe.
Yes, it did.
So if Robert Whittaker wins, I think he automatically gets another title shot against whoever wins Izzy versus Alex Pereira.
Well, I like how you mentioned that because mine's Izzy versus Alex Pereira. It's simple to say this. I like the style better. I don't love him. I'm getting tired of watching Izzy just kind of slow pace the fights.
His past couple fights, he hasn't been. He hasn't been fighting to knock you out. He's been fighting to
survive.
Survive.
And I'm
Fighting to not lose.
Yeah, he's fighting to not lose.
And he has a big presence because he doesn't have the fighting excitement that McGregor did, but he really truly has that kind of personality to fit that fighting style McGregor had. There we go.
I mean, so you think, like,
Wait, hold on.
so like, overall, you think that his fighting style is kind of like mimicking McGregor?
No, it's his personality mimics McGregor of the attention. I'm a razzed trash talk, all that stuff that McGregor had to be a champion, which kind of like brought him like spotlight and brought him a lot of, it brought the UFC a lot of views. He had
The
that,
showmanship.
The showmanship, but he doesn't have the fight. He doesn't. He when he first came up, Izzy was a great spar. He was gonna knock your head off, exploit your weaknesses, and he didn't care if he took some punches. Now it's like, I'm gonna use my reach to get the jabs I need to score a win.
I'm gonna win 3 out of the 5 rounds.
Yes, I'm not gonna be aggressive. I'm gonna be very almost like kind of like a Floyd. I'm gonna be defensive, but it's not like a defensive perfection that Floyd has. It's just I'm just too scared to fight.
Right.
But to be fair, the decision goes to the champion. So he doesn't. If they're going to award him a win for doing just enough, I mean, I don't blame him. It's just not as exciting for us.
Well, my fight, which hasn't been announced yet, is I'm excited for Conor McGregor to make his long-awaited comeback. I know you're going to say it's a cop-out.
It's not a cop-out.
Because I just remember, Andrew and I went to go see the fight, 510 Johnny's in Bel Air when it was still open. And we went to a bar that had no cover because we made plans to go watch it. Even though I'm not huge in the UFC, we made plans because Conor McGregor's still that big of a draw.
Yes.
And him breaking his leg in that fight, which I know a lot of Conor fans will say he would have won. He was going to lose. But at the same time, I'm excited to see him come back. And I don't think we've heard the last of Conor McGregor. No. And I don't think that he is at the point where he's going to be done. So I'm just excited to see him out and fight. I think it's great for the sport when he's fighting.
I agree. Conor has had some interesting, rumors and accusations set around him.
Your wife's in my DMs, baby.
Well, that was beautiful. That was gorgeous. That is poetry at its finest. But what we have seen is Conor has been in and out of court. We've heard of reckless driving. We've heard of recently steroid accusations that he's been dodging. USADA, which with drug testing, and Dana White's having calling him out. And it's like, okay, he's filming this movie. I can't think of the movie, but the fact that Conor McGregor is trying to be an actor now is like nothing surprises me anymore.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's so beautiful.
But we want McGregor back. And let's be honest, everyone, and all the viewers, let's be honest. Would we still watch the UFC if there wasn't any hope of like Conor? Like we might watch it a little bit, but we don't watch it as much as we do.
I can tell you,
for Conor McGregor to announce a fight.
I definitely would not.
That's the thing. Conor has made the sport. Say what you want.
Mainstream.
But here's the thing. Dana White, that was the guy he took and brought success to the UFC was Conor. The fact that he's now 34, I think, turning 35 soon, and he's broken his leg. He has a titanium rod in my shin bone.
Titanium shin bone.
And we're still waiting for this basically half robot to announce a fight, and he's probably tested positive for every fucking substance under the sun. I love it.
Well, it's also
true.
He's out there brewing whiskey, and I know his whiskey ban,
Proper 12,
which I've had a bad experience with, but it was it's very successful. I know it sold.
It was not successful for your Super Bowl night.
I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. Rough night.
But no, like you say, he's had a lot of success outside the ring. But it's time for Conor to get back to what made him successful.
Now, do you think that's why Dana White is pushing O'Malley? Because he thinks McGregor might be exploring new ventures and might not fight for a while?
It's 100% why. We knew after Khabib, Conor was going to take some time away. And yes, he made some comebacks, with Poirier, Cowboy Poirier. And it hasn't been the comeback we all thought it was going to be like.
He lost the fight in him.
Yes.
He fought Floyd. He got $100 million. I think I would lose some fights.
Well, and the thing is, if I could just say this, because I know more about straight up boxing and the history of boxing than I do UFC. Mm-hmm. And UFC is taking over boxing because the reason for that is, and I love Conor McGregor, and that fight with Floyd was box office and it was great. Problem is, now it's either a crossover star or it's just celebrities fighting. That's where boxing's headed. So when Floyd Mayweather runs out of money because he is stupid with his money. Yeah, because he's Floyd Mayweather, and he runs out of money and inevitably has to fight somebody. Like, which Paul brother was it? It was Jake Paul he fought, right? Yeah. It was Logan Paul?
So, yeah, he fought the wrong Paul brother. That's
But
the non-boxer.
You're going to tell me that fight was not staged.
Oh, no, it was staged. We all know it.
But
Floyd's fighting for money because he's broke.
But the thing is, you're going to tell me that Floyd Mayweather, who's considered by a lot of people the greatest boxer ever, he's definitely
Not me.
But he's in the consideration.
Yeah, he's in consideration.
Definitely the best boxer of our time.
Yes.
And you're going to tell me that this guy Logan Paul trained for 2 years before the fight is going to come in there and go the distance? I'm not buying it.
No,
I know there's a height difference, but dude, that fight damaged the sport, and I think that's why you're seeing a much bigger uptick in the viewership and the attention being paid to for the UFC.
Well, I agree because the UFC has kept integrity, and that's all through Dana White. Dana White has, when Jake Paul's name comes up, Dana White shuts that shit down. You know why? Because Jake Paul ain't going to survive in the UFC.
Or Logan.
Because
Logan could, but that's a different topic.
Logan used to wrestle in high school, but I don't want to talk about the Paul brothers. They both sucked. But the thing is, I think the mentality is different for both boxing and UFC. Everyone's like, it's similar. It's fighting. No. One, you have ropes and you go in and you get dolled up and you wear these nice little plush gloves. Other one, you get locked into a freaking steel cage.
Well, it's like
it's okay. Hey, go. You do whatever you want. Just don't poke his eyes. Don't get under his gloves, and don't use the cage wall as a means to cause.
If you remember the Mayweather McGregor fight, though, there was a big argument at the beginning and a little bit at the end about it being staged.
Yes.
It was going to be staged, and people who were like, "Why they end the fight? Conor was going to get killed."
Yes,
he was going to get killed at the end. Floyd Mayweather, as much as I dislike him, and you'll find out I really dislike Floyd Mayweather, he is a great boxer. All-time great boxer. And Conor McGregor did a great job training for that fight. I think he actually performed way better than anyone expected. Yes. I know some Conor fans were like, he's going to win. If it was UFC, no contest. Because he can use his legs.
Floyd would die.
Yeah, Floyd would die. But the thing is, everyone's like, why did they stop the fight? It's rigged. I do not think that fight was rigged. No. I think it was 100% genuine. But the problem is now going forward is, think about it. Past that fight, what has been the most exciting boxing match of the last 10 years? Other than
Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley.
No, it's been Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. That fight was staged. That fight was fixed because Mike Tyson won. Yeah. Tyson beat Jones. But what I'm saying is, it's going to be is celebrity boxing. That's where the sport is headed, and I think
it's lost the integrity.
UFC is taking over what boxing was supposed to be.
I agree completely.
The only thing that Dana White's done close to that is he brought in CM Punk, and he had 2 fights and he's out.
He's out there, but that's the thing. He gave him a shot. And he said, "Okay, you're not doing shit. Get the hell out of here." And I think the point is that we could bring back to Conor real quick. Conor has Conor could help bring the UFC more revenue, or they're going to move on without him. Yep. And it's simple as that. When Conor first walked out of the UFC, he still had a good amount of bargaining power with Dana. That has been gone by them growing the brand. Having top premier fights happening now. You have a roster of guys who have names that across the board. Ngannou, Adesanya, bring in Usman. Leon Edwards recently knocking him out. Whittaker. You got Volk. You got guys now people follow. It's not just the Conor McGregor show. Even though he still holds a hefty sum of what people come and see for the UFC, it's kind of transitioned from
I think
McGregor to these other
you
fighters.
Both would agree. Just like in golf, it is better for golf to keep a good relationship with Tiger Woods.
Yes.
So it's best for the UFC to keep a really good relationship
with McGregor
because it's marketing. It's even if he shows up in his front row at a fight, people still go out to see McGregor. He's the face of the sport. He is the face of the sport. And I know we have up-and-comers. We have up-and-comers at golf. They're not Tiger Woods, and they'll never be Tiger Woods' image. They won't be Conor McGregor's image. That's the big thing about keeping McGregor around and making sure there's a good relationship.
And that's why I think you see the whole USADA thing get swept under the rug about him dodging drug tests. It's because you don't want this going out. Like, yes, the fighting community knows about it. We knew about it, like Nick and I, but the public really doesn't. It's more so like with stress sweeps on the rug. We all know they're going to know about it. But if the mainstream news doesn't know about it, we're fine. It's fine. And that's what they're doing. They're going to appease him. Sure. I hope he does come back. And when he comes back, trust me, my weekend plans, do not call me, text me, or ask me where I am. You know where I'm at.
Same here. I'll make plans to watch McGregor. McGregor, no matter if win or lose, is must watch.
Mom, Dad, I love you. You won't hear from me that day, okay?
You don't even have to watch the fight. You just have to listen to what he says after the fight.
Exactly. We could see about wives and DMs. I love this. This is beautiful. Now, I was going to go into like what future fights, if you have to pick them, would you want to see? But I think Ray kind of got us there for that.
Yeah.
I'll say it real quick, and then we can wrap it up. If you have one too, Nick, I would love to hear it. I really want to see Usman versus Edwards again. That's the fight because
It's a good one.
we did not see Leon Edwards. The entire fight, he was behind on the card. He was. And we didn't see till 5th round when somehow his corner just got him to light up and he landed a perfect combo on Usman and knocked him out, who was the number 1 pound for pound male fighter in the world.
He was a minute away winning.
Yep, he was a minute away from winning, and Leon Edwards does the impossible. It was almost like Rocky, in my opinion. You're watching Rocky 2. This guy's he's competitive. It's a good fight, but Usman's what the fuck just happened? Boom.
Well, I know we don't want to talk about it, but Rocky 2 is underrated, and it would be an all-time great Rocky if he would have won actually, instead of with a second left getting up. That has not aged well.
Do you think Rocky is better than Rocky 2?
Yes, Rocky 1 is better than Rocky 2.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, but
I thought Rocky 5 was the best, actually.
Get the fuck out of here.
well, I like 4. I like all the montages.
You lost all credibility about any fighting ever by putting Rocky 5.
I'm joking.
Well, I mean, you using the term browsing kind of already
browsing.
disqualifies you. Like, well, what's going on,
you
huh?
browsing for?
Is there a
Browsing-
certain catalog you like to
pictures
browse?
of Ronda Rousey?
Ronda Rousey.
Don't check my search history.
But the point is, I want to see what happens with Edwards Usman. That was an unexpected loss for Usman, who's been almost, I would say, perfect. He's been a great fighter and unquestionably the best fighter in the UFC until that loss. And we all knew Edwards was athletic. Edwards was competitive about it, but we never really understood that. And even in the fight, we're like, Edwards is going to lose until that happened. And I would love to see what happens. I would put money on Usman. I think it was just a shock loss, but I still want to see how Usman's going to respond to Edwards.
I would agree.
It only takes one shot to knock someone out. The fight that I would really want to see is contingent on Sean O'Malley beating Piotr Jan, and that is Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley 2.
Bring it back, baby.
Bring it back. If Sean wins, I feel like everyone would want to see him go against the guy that gave him his only loss.
His only loss, yeah. I mean, we're seeing that with Izzy right now with Alex Pereira. I like that. It's where a guy has done so well, you kind of got to bring back his kryptonite. It's like I'm doing well in life, and then out of nowhere, like Ray's crazy ex-girlfriend comes back and
Which one? There's several. There's several.
Ray goes from being successful to now he's in the dump, and his life's falling apart, midlife crisis. But
mint chocolate chip ice cream.
mint chocolate chip ice cream.
You guys are pricks. Fuck off.
Right? Do you have any other fight that you would like to talk about? I know
The fight that's going to happen afterwards, because you all brought up mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Could be Israel Adesanya versus the real champion Marvin Vettori.
What's the matter?
I think Ray is struggling right now. Ray,
I think I did well for not following UFC
Ray
bad.
did really well for not knowing any UFC at all. I'm very proud of him.
Well, it's not that I don't know any UFC. It's just I haven't been keeping up with it since probably junior year of high school.
Yeah. And special thank you to Nick Kindbeiter for coming on this episode. Nick, you got any final words for us before we close this one out?
I am the destroyer of trees. No tree is safe. Sean O'Malley beats Piotr Jan in the second round by knockout.
Hear the instability in his voice.
You don't know what your girlfriend's favorite ice cream is. I don't want to hear this.
Ray, you have a girlfriend? Okay, on that note,
yeah, I'm sorry, all the single women Ray is taken.
Well, everyone at this table is now taken, so I think
If
there's any single woman at this listening to this.
Congratulations to Andrew Zorn for securing the bag. Much love as always for my best friend and co-host.
The Bachelor's off the table.
There's no more Bachelor is officially
the Dallas Bachelor party's over.
It's over now, but Nick, thank you for coming on. We had a great time.
Thank you guys for having me.
We'll have Nick on again. Let us know what else other topics for special episodes you guys like to hear from us. UFC was one that I really wanted, and Nick, loving UFC as much as I do, we had to bring him on. Ray, I know we had some more NBA and college football. I think we got.
I think college football is a good one. I think what we could talk about too, for your Yankees, because the 2-0.
Hey, we're coming back. I don't care.
They're not coming back.
I don't care.
That might be a sweep. Get the brooms out.
No
Get the brooms out.
No brooms.
Brooms out. We got a broom upstairs.
Tell your girl to go sweep.
Hey, and just letting everyone know, starting next week, we hope to have video.
We've had some technical difficulties. We're still working on it. We are almost there.
But
God just hates us.
God does hate us.
God, yeah,
But I think we should wrap this one up. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening today. I hope you guys really enjoyed, and then we'll be posting again this upcoming Wednesday. We'll have our episode out for the podcast. So Nick, thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you guys for listening. Have a good one, y'all.